A hard-boiled detective refuses to believe that his friend is guilty of murder and proceeds to investigate to find the truth. Elliott Gould plays the classic noir detective Philip Marlowe, and if we look close, we might just recognise someone familiar with a mustache. Let's discuss The Long Goodbye. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Balls, baby, balls.
This is a movie podcast, and we are working through 70s thriller season here on the show. This is week 3. Today we are looking at a film from 1973. It is called The Long Goodbye. So we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. Helps us out a bunch if you do. Rate us 5 stars on your audio podcast platforms, and of course you can support the show and get bonus content by going to Patreon. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So again, shaking things up. Thriller is a fairly broad genre, and this kind of takes us away from what we've been doing in the last couple to a hard-boiled private detective, which is a neo-noir type story, starring Elliott Gould as Philip Marlowe. I did not know much about this movie going in, other than one uncredited cameo that happens later on in the film. I didn't know that was coming, but I did not know that this is actually like a character who's been in other movies. And honestly, that I had seen one of those other movies.
So have you?
Yes. Right. Well, the most famous one, other than this, perhaps, is The Big Sleep, I believe it's called, which is a Humphrey Bogart movie from 1946. And what's interesting about that is I watched that for the first time, like maybe early last year. Within the last couple of years. Not been that long. However, if you asked me what that movie was about, I couldn't tell you, because it was a convoluted mess and I have no idea what the plot was by the time we got to the end of it. I kind of hated it. I don't understand why it has any lasting impact at all. So
Did you take a big sleep in the middle of it?
I wanted to. I was dreaming of sleeping in the middle of it. So did not like that one remotely. Okay. I did not know that going into this though, right? This was I did not know there was a connection because I didn't recognize the name, because the character's name's Philip Marlowe. I did not recognize that name when they started talking about it. It wasn't like it was springing memories in my head. It was just kind of after the fact that I just sort of looked up like some stuff about the movie and went, oh wait, Humphrey Bogart played this character. Oh, I've seen that movie. Oh, and then
What got me was, as I was finishing watching it, I watched this on Amazon Prime, and it said, up next, like other things you may like, and there was a movie called Marlowe. Apparently there have been 2, one that just came out in 2022, starring Liam Neeson, and one back in 1969. I don't know which one it was, but I was like, oh, okay, so this character has been around, will continue to be around to some extent. There is at least something more continuing this, and that got me looking up probably the same list you did of seeing the different things that he was in. Yeah,
a bunch of books and short stories before he started getting adapted into movies. This is, of course, based on a book, as you'd expect, given what I just said. And the thing that I remembered, or I was reminded of when I was looking this up, because when I watched The Big Sleep, which is one of those, you've heard of The Big Sleep. It's one of those noir movies from that time period. If you know anything about movies, you've probably heard of it being mentioned. So I was very surprised when I really, really didn't like it. And apparently, when I was looking up, hey, this is a convoluted mess, back when I watched that movie, I found people talking about it, and the quote that was presented there from the author who created the character, who wrote the book that movie was based on, and also wrote the book this movie was based on. Someone asked him about a plot detail to clear something up because they didn't, get something from the story. I don't know if they'd watched the movie or read his book. It doesn't really matter. And he said, "Why are you asking me? I only wrote it." Which basically, he wasn't someone who was that concerned with the plot points as much as he was just the types of characters that he was writing. Is the gist I was getting from it. So now,
which is a bit weird for a noir mystery. Like you would think that'd be the one thing that he really knows what's going on.
So yeah, I'm prefacing all this by giving this backstory to my otherwise association with this character in previous work. Now this is obviously a very different era. You know, that was the 40s. This is the 70s. Different type of actor and Elliott Gould. You know, it was a very different overall kind of thing. Robert Altman. This is actually the first movie I've ever seen directed by Robert Altman. I've never seen any of his other films. I've heard of a few of them, but I've never seen any of them. So
I don't think I've seen any of his. I very briefly looked in his filmography and didn't see anything familiar, but something may have slipped in there.
Yeah, I think he did the MASH movie. He did a movie called Three Women. He did Popeye starring Robin Williams, I think, which is like feels really weird for given the rest of his movies,
right?
But you know, whatever.
Yeah,
spread your wings.
Yeah, I'm looking through it. I'm not. I feel like I started watching Gosford Park at some point and never finished it, but nothing else is ringing any bells.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I guess it's because, frankly, his movies, for the most part, other than maybe Popeye, are not the sort of thing that was going to appeal to me as a kid. They weren't going to appeal to me as a teenager, and it's only really now that I'm in my middle-aged kind of like life that maybe I'd be more willing to kind of check out some of the, you know, what looks like fairly dry cinema compared to what I would be watching in those time periods in my life.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, we'll get into it, and we'll see how we feel. I mean, the premise of this is fairly straightforward. Philip Marlowe is a private detective who one night goes out to get his cat some cat food because he's not done a good job of keeping it stocked, and a series of events lead him to being picked up for the potential murder of his friend's wife, and then he's let out on that quite quickly. And it's kind of like, okay, what actually happened to his friend's wife, and the investigation from there.
Yeah, it's that's the baseline story plot, but so much of this is this ever-growing web of characters and seeing how everyone is interconnected, even if it seems completely separated. There's always these little things that start drawing everyone together, and that's kind of what the noir mystery aspect really does boil down to in the end is, okay, if everyone's connected, what actually happened here? What actually, like, was the crime, and then also who did it?
Yeah. So with that said, with the chips on the table, David, what did you think of The Long Goodbye?
So what you said there of, why are you asking me? I only wrote it. I feel that. I feel that pretty strongly in this movie. And it's not that I think that the plot is incomprehensible. I think that there is a pretty clear line. I think that we do understand what happens. It follows a couple of like neo-noir tropes that I've come to expect from certain things. But I did feel like there were big portions of this movie where I wasn't sure if we were still like on track anymore, I guess is the best way I could describe it. It felt kind of a little meandering, kind of like it was doing other things. I guess my biggest thing is I didn't ever feel like I knew that we were always going towards what I thought the mystery was. It felt like we were always tipping on the point of doing this completely other separate mystery, and like it wouldn't have anything to do with the main one. Big positives though. I really like the character of Philip Marlowe, at least as Elliott Gould is playing him. I think he does have it's not the same sort of neo-noir kind of detective like your Humphrey Bogarts or anything like that, but there is a certain dry wit and a sarcasm to him that you can't not like him as a character. I think that he does a great job of making him, despite being this kind of down and out kind of guy, he is a very likable character. And then a lot of this movie has a very improvisational structure to it. It has a lot of overlapping dialogue. It has a lot of characters that feel like they were given the gist of it on the page, but the actors are just allowed to run. But it really works for me here. I really do think it adds to this realism and this grittiness that we're going for. Not in that it's trying to be like, you know, a gritty film of where it's set in like New York or whatever. Like he lives in a penthouse next to a bunch of beautiful women. It's supposed to be a little bit outlandish, but I think that the improvisational structure kind of brings it back down and grounds it back to earth and makes it feel a lot more realistic in that way. So overall, I came out of this positive. I did, like I said, have some trouble keeping track of things, but I think it was a very well done movie, and I think if anything was going to get me interested in checking out any of the other Marlowe cinematic universe or whatever it is he's got going on, I think this would be one that would do it. I'm more interested in the character, even though I'm pretty sure I'm just more interested in Elliott Gould's portrayal rather than the character itself.
Yeah, I don't know if he played him again or if this was the one and done. Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing. I like the first 20 minutes or so. I was kind of, obviously it was slow moving, like a lot of these 70s thrillers have kind of been sort of getting into, and because it was all taking place on this one night at the start, and it was going through these things that he's doing, and sort of giving you these little seeds of where some plot's going to come from, or details that might be important later. I thought it was going to be, okay, the first chunk of the movie is going to be all in this night, and then the rest of it's going to be about deconstructing what actually happened on this night from other perspectives and that kind of thing. And I was kind of into the way it was very naturally going through the series of events. After he's arrested though, on suspicion of being tied to the murder that's happened, and then he's let out. And again, that's not a spoiler. That's very much the setup to what the rest of the movie's going to be. Once that happens, I just lost more interest as the movie went on, because I didn't really like how it progressed through its story. Like you were saying, it kind of feels at times that we just kind of drop the main plot and go do other things. And those other things may end up being very relevant to the main plot, which isn't something that I even necessarily like, to be honest. It's kind of coming into that sort of convoluted nature of... It's the thing I don't like about noirs, honestly, more than anything. I like the tone of a noir, and I can enjoy some of the characters in a noir. I don't really like the everything is connected and... at least without good reason, but there's definitely a thread that he goes down that ends up being connected that I don't think was if it feels a bit coincidental that it ends up being so tied to everything that's going on. But I mean, there's definitely scenes that are well filmed. There's definitely moments that I can say, hey, I really like how they handled this scene where the camera's just looking at the ocean, or that I really liked how, they captured this. And, I also didn't mind some of the almost talking over each other kind of natural bickering that would happen in some scenes. I thought there was a really down-to-earth style in the way it was being directed, even if I thought the plot was just kind of but there was definitely, I think by the time I hit the second half of the movie though, and he's going back to talk to this same couple again, or he's going somewhere else to talk to this other group of characters are introduced halfway through, there was definitely a point where I'm like, okay, I think I don't give a shit about this plot anymore. It's kind of lost me. And I don't think it ever was going to get... And by the time it's doing its big ending and the finale and all that, and revealing kind of the final beats, I was kind of like, okay, I feel like you could have done more to actually set this up at the end, as opposed to it feeling like we're just kind of rushing to this conclusion after everything else is wrapped up. Yeah,
I get that. For me, a lot of the interest kind of waxed and waned. There were, I would say, 20-minute segments repeatedly where I would just struggle to give a damn about what was happening, and then there were the following 20 minutes where it really grabbed me, and there's something that I'm really latching onto here. I would agree that I think by the time we get the explanation of how everything played out and we get to that third act stuff, it does feel a little bit rushed. It does feel like we kind of didn't earn this ending in a lot of ways, but at the same time, that was somewhere where I was in that waning period. I think right up in the sequence right before then, I was really into it again. I was like, oh, this is super interesting. So yeah, there's a give and take between it for me. But for the most part, I think, like you're saying, the characters, the writers seem to have a better focus on them than the plot itself. I really liked how the characters interacted with each other. That was enough to save the movie for me, even if the plot itself really wasn't an A grade by any means.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of even in the back half, there were still individual scenes that I thought were well done and well performed and well directed, right? There was individual scenes where I can say I liked how they handled this moment. I just don't care about what's going on anymore enough to I guess it's not enough to save the movie for me. It's too up and down where I'm just I'm going through these stretches where I'm just kind of I'm just kind of bored. And I don't think I ever felt that way about the other movies we've done so far this season. I think both Clute and French Connection, I think, are definitely methodically paced. And I suspect that most of the movies we're going to do in this season are, because 70s thrillers have a very specific kind of pacing to them that seems pretty consistent up until this point. Maybe we'll see it evolve a little bit because we're kind of going roughly in chronological order throughout the season. But for me, this was like kind of like a marrying of the 70s style with a character who was mainly written about in like the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. And even his car in this looks like a car from the 40s. I think that was a very intentional choice they did to make him feel like he still had some of that old school kind of vibe.
Yeah. That, and they keep on bringing up how he constantly wears his suit. Like, he's always wearing a suit and tie everywhere he goes. It has that sort of older feel vibe, whereas everyone else is just pretty much exactly what you would expect from 70s garb.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm pretty mixed on it, ultimately. I do think it's better than Big Sleep. I mean, I'll give it that. Like, I came out of the Big Sleep going, that is a convoluted mess. I think this one, I understand what happened in the movie, and that's more than I can say for the Big Sleep, so that's a plus. But it still didn't quite all feel like it was fitting together as it was progressing for me to like feel a sense of momentum and to there was definitely times where it kind of felt like, I want to really be invested in this character caring about solving the main case, but at times it kind of like even if like taking away the up and downs of like the interest as it was going through its various sections. Like, I really felt like I could have used like a bit more of the connection he had to the main suspect in terms of like the friendship, and to really care about why he's like, no, I'm going to try and clear his name. I don't believe he did this, and we don't get a whole ton of anything on that front to really get into. And I know you could argue, well, the way he acts, the way he believes these things are telling us a lot about how he feels about him. But I think the problem is that given all we see of this other character in the first 20 minutes, all of it kind of feels like he is a villain. So it's hard to really get on Marlowe's side of being like, oh, he's willing to, it's worth trying to prove his innocence, because I don't think I was ever believing for the majority of the movie that he could be innocent. I just assumed he wasn't. Right. So, that could have helped.
Yeah, it's one of those problems where obviously you want there to be a mystery, so you don't want to get too in depth of exploring who these secondary characters are, because at any point you could flip up and, oh, now all of a sudden there's this switch, there's this change of how you view things. But yeah, it is an issue where he comes in and he is vouching, Marlowe is vouching for this guy and saying how wonderful of a person he is. And meanwhile, like you said, throughout the entire first time I'm seeing him, I'm like, oh, okay, so that's the antagonist. That's the guy who's like going to be the big problem here. And then all of a sudden they start talking buddy-buddy. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind, I guess. Yeah.
It's just something that didn't quite click for me, all things considered. So I don't know, like, obviously there'll be people who are really into this movie. It's obviously a classic that gets a lot of praise, and then again, so did The Big Sleep, and I thought that movie was a mess. I think this is much better than that, but I think there is definitely something I'm discovering here of a certain type of movie that I just don't like very much, and this is maybe just too much of that type of movie, even though there's definitely good things in it and things that I can appreciate about it. So so unfortunately this one didn't quite work for me by the end, but
that's fine, that's fair. I mean, I am not vehemently defending it. I think there are plenty of problems with it in terms of pacing, but I think that it doesn't feel like it was a movie that was made just for the sake of getting this script adapted. It felt like there was some passion behind the camera. It felt like it was done with a purpose, and it just kind of didn't shake out somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I wonder, like, how people who are into the book feel about the movie, and like how much of the movie changes from the book, or like does the book have the same kind of like problems that we're describing, and it's just something that people like that we just don't, or is it something where there's something in translation to being a movie has kind of raised some problems? Because in a book you can have chapters focusing on different things and kind of treat it a bit more episodically, kind of thing, whereas in a movie that feels a bit weird to do it that way. So
yeah, not to mention the idea of, in a book, and this is present in a lot of neo-noirs, is the narration, the idea that we know exactly what's going on in a character's head, and we don't get that in this one, but we do have him kind of muttering to himself and just kind of making little offhanded jokes to himself the entire way through.
Yeah. So, I mean, Elliott Gould is good in the role. He he does come off across as this grumpy, smart ass, pretty much most of the time. I think he has kind of a kind of calm presence to him, where no matter how threatening someone else is, he just kind of sits there and takes it and rolls with it. Even though he might be in danger, he kind of just sort of shrugs it off almost.
Oh yeah, he's a very passive protagonist for pretty much the entirety of the movie. He just lets stuff happen to him and gets pushed around wherever he needs to be.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into what the other characters are particularly, but kind of the other major roles here are Eileen and Roger Wade, are a married couple that play into the plot heavily. She's played by Nina Van Pallandt. I'll go with that pronunciation. And then Roger Wade's played by Sterling Hayden. Now, I don't actually know those names, if I'm honest, but they seem like they're prominent enough characters that they're worth mentioning, for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, I can't say I really recognised anyone else. Oh, actually, no, there's a doctor character who I kind of recognised, Henry Gibson. I've definitely seen his face in some other things. I couldn't tell you what off the top of my head, but...
the doctor character also came back in one of the director's other things, Nashville. I saw him in that, which I was just browsing through. So
yeah, well, I've definitely not
been around there.
Seen that. Yeah. So, as previously established, he was, however, in Inner Space and the Blues Brothers, so I've definitely seen him in both those.
Okay. I mean, there are a couple other characters I would like to mention, but I think the one that we definitely need to bring up that I'm certain you recognized.
Well, you're talking about the uncredited cameo before this person became a proper actor. Go on, say it. You want to.
Oh, I get to say it.
You can say it, fine. By all means.
So third act, there's a sequence where some people start stripping down for various reasons. We'll
you
get
don't
to
have
it,
to give
one of them,
context to what's happening in the scene.
One of them is much more buff than everybody else. And turns out this is a early role for Arnold Schwarzenegger with the weirdest mustache. I don't know why he had that.
It was the 70s, okay?
I guess.
He had a look, okay, when he was doing his bodybuilding, and he had this little camera. I wonder how much English he could speak at this point, because this is like a good decade before his other movies. I wonder if he was still learning, and that's what, because he doesn't have any lines. He's just this beefcake in the background. Right. So just food for thought, I guess.
He's also he's so much more buff. He's so much more tan as well. And also I'm pretty sure he's wearing yellow briefs, so it extra pops out. I don't know what they were doing, but they wanted you to notice him there.
Maybe he was doing one of these competitions that year, and it was hey, we've got Mr. Universe or whatever, Mr. Bodybuilder.
I'm gonna butcher trying to type in the name Schwarzenegger here. Schwarzenegger. There we go. 1973. Yeah, that's when he was at his peak. That's when he was.
Yeah,
he was Mr. Olympia, 1973.
Olympia. There you go. I wasn't going to get what the real thing was called, but I feel like I was in the ballpark. Yes. When he's pumping iron, as the documentary would call it later on. Yeah. He loves to come everywhere. I don't know if you've seen that clip.
I have. I'm surprised we can just throw that out on YouTube, but all right, fair enough.
That word on its own is not that problematic.
All right.
I come here, I come everywhere. Context. I love to come. I'm coming all the time. He loves to do it. Anyway,
in case this video gets demonetized again, Patreon is a thing.
So yes, I will get to spoilers then. All right. So spoilers for The Long Goodbye. Actually, so what I mention, actually, I don't really have much to say on the music, to be honest, but I did notice that it's an early John Williams credit.
Yes.
But I have to admit, I barely noticed any of the music in it.
Well, I thought there was a very interesting choice made here. I don't know why they made it, but they made a song called The Long Goodbye. It opens the movie, not open, but as they're running the titles. And it comes up 4 or 5 different times over the course of the movie, but each time it's arranged differently. It's done in a different style. Even in the opening title sequence, it pops between a more rock pop sort of like upbeat thing and switches over to the same song being played, but it's more of a love ballad sounding thing. And it's I don't know why they chose to do that, but it was a very interesting every time it popped up throughout the film.
It's to mimic the erratic plot.
Sure.
The music's just jumping around as often in style as the movie story is. Yeah, so I mean the whole start of this movie, the movie literally opens with him waking up because his cat's meowing at him, wanting food, and he doesn't have any cat food left, so we kind of follow him around trying to like find some. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to get some cat food. It's 3 a.m, but there's a 24-hour store nearby. And it also establishes that across the walkway, because he's got this really unique place that he lives in, which is he's at the top of like an apartment sort of like complex or whatever, but the walkway is like outside. It's got an outside walkway, and the elevator to go down is that like it's like a Y-shaped walkway. So there's like another place across the way where like 5 hippie girls live who are always topless. So that they established that, but
always topless, always doing yoga. It's like every man's dream in that era.
He doesn't seem to care very much, but they ask him to pick up some brownie mix at the store, and he's nice enough to do it. But he, you know, the elevator's at this sort of this Y like shape of this walkway. That again is entirely outdoors, at least on the top. Maybe in the rest of the building it isn't, but at the top it is.
Yeah, the best way I could describe it for like how it feels it's laid out is like an Ewok village sort of thing. Like this feels like it's on treetops, but they're just buildings. It's
very unique, right? I'll say that. I immediately said, I hope we do something interesting with this apartment because it's like a really interesting layout. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I buy that this place just exists somewhere in California because it feels like, you know, this is the only place that this building could exist is California. It's just very California in every way, but very unique, right? I'm like, oh, you could do something interesting with this location. I don't think they ever did, sadly. I was kind of hoping there was going to be like a big set piece that takes place at this location later, you know, like someone's going up the elevator and we can see it coming up and he tries to, you know, do something, especially since there's like a walkway almost outside his entire curved window that his like living room has. Like, it's a really cool location. So I appreciated the place, but I just wish they did something a bit more with it. But but anyway, he goes to the store. Okay, weird plot point here, especially as someone who has a cat, who has cats himself, is they don't have the brand of cat food that his cat likes. So he comes home with some other brands, some other cans, and he tries to trick the cat by locking the cat out of the kitchen and getting an old can that's already empty of the brand that he likes and putting the new cat food into the old can so that when the cat comes in, this might trick the cat into thinking, oh no, this is the brand you like. You know, you're just all in your head. The cat food's all the same. And I'm thinking, sometimes my cats get fussy and just decide they're sick of something they've been eating for like a week. Like, the brand has nothing to do with it. This is nonsense.
Yeah. Not to mention, earlier on, before he goes out for the cat food, he tries just like mixing together some random kitchen ingredients.
Oh, that's right.
To try to entice the cat. It's just like, here, will you eat any of this? And the first thing he lays down, the cat is definitely eating, but in the plot, he's not supposed to. So he like picks up the plate again and adds like salt and stuff to it. I'm like, of course the cat's not going to eat that. But he just left the basic thing alone. It would have been fine.
Yeah, although I'm pretty sure it was cream cheese, which is terrible for a cat, and you should not be feeding your cat that in any way, shape, or form. But
fair enough.
Yeah, the cat just runs out the little cat door that he's got at the side of his house, and we never see the cat again. I was so convinced because he kept bringing up his cat going missing that the cat would show up at the end again as part of like a wraparound, and it never does.
Well, it doesn't show up as a conclusion or anything, but the fact that it disappeared does come back in the end.
Sure, it's a motive, I suppose, at the very end of the movie for something.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that. But as this is all playing out, though, we also get introduced to this other character who we find out later is named Terry Lennox, who we see leaving. We don't really necessarily know exactly what it is in the first scene, but later on we get more context for it, because he basically goes past like a little security checkout with a security guard, and it turns out to be the entrance to like a sort of private neighborhood in Malibu. So it's one of these places where it's just a neighborhood, but you know, it's kind of cordoned off, and it's like, hey, only people who are like, you know, permitted access can come in and out, that kind of thing.
Yeah. You were talking about wanting to see something on this rooftop because it's so uniquely designed. As he's pulling into the security thing, I felt like the camera really held on a sign that said, "Do not reverse out, will cause severe tire damage." And I'm like, clearly, we're going to have that happen at some point during like a car chase or something. No, never did.
No, but they do set up that the security guard that works here loves doing impressions of actors, and that's a running thing throughout the movies, him doing like impressions of actors, none of whom I really recognized, if I'm honest, because they're, you know...
the one they really nailed, the one they got just spot on was Jimmy Stewart. That one was just A+.
You done showing off? You feeling good about that?
I'm really good at my Jimmy Stewart. I've perfected that one.
Oh, okay. So the thing though to notice though, and I did notice it in the scene, is that he's got like a big scratch mark down one side of his face. It's not the face that's mostly facing the camera, but every so often he turns a little bit, you can kind of see it. So you know, the surprise here, because I thought, okay, we're following the killer of, you know, whoever's going to do something bad, as we're following the private detective doing his thing, and eventually we're going to sort of like, you know, this will be important what both of them were doing during this time period. What I did not expect was this character Terry to show up at Marlowe's apartment. Like, he actually just shows up as a friend, and he's like, oh yeah, I had another fight with the wife, that's what the scratch is, you know, things are kind of bad. I had a favor, can you give me a lift to Mexico?
Yeah. Like, he opens up just like, hey, we're friends, right? Can you do me a favor? He's like, yeah, of course, anything. He's like, cool, I need a ride to Tijuana. He's like, tonight? Yeah, right now. Oh, okay. It's like 3 a.m., but whatever.
Yeah, anyone else would question, like, scratch marks on the face, sudden, like, we have to go to Mexico right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, he did say he got in a fight with the missus.
Yes.
He said there was a fight, and I just, you know, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here. So let's go.
Yep, this doesn't look bad, though, when Marlowe gets back in the morning, and there's two policemen waiting for him, demanding some answers, searching his place and all sorts. Wanting to know, you know, like, hey, there's kind of a lot of talking around what they're actually doing, and he's just kind of giving them lip, but eventually he's like, hey, like, you know, like, you need to give me a charge. I mean, I think they actually drag him to the station first, and like, they interrogate him, and he's giving them more lip the entire time, and he's like, you have to give me a charge, and eventually they're like, oh, how about accessory after the fact to murder, you pissant? Like, here's what you're being charged with. Like, where's Terry? Where did you take him? He killed his wife.
There was one bit that I thought it was going into like parody territory, but I guess this may have just been how it was done. They're bringing him in, they're booking him, and they're taking his picture, and they say, like, you know, face to the camera, turn right, turn left, and then it comes out, and we see the pictures come out like one of those carnival, like, fun,
it's a photo booth
things where a photo booth, like an actual, like, it's not connected to a person behind the camera. They just have it. Was this normal? It felt like a parody.
It might be just not like a normal, because this is the sort of thing I expect in a Naked Gun movie. It's like them doing the photographs in a photo booth. The only thing,
the rest of the scene is played totally straight, and nothing else is weird.
The only thing missing is him holding up like a balloon animal or something while he's getting his photos taken.
Right.
Yeah, that might just be how some police stations did it back in the day.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it seems plausible enough, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, obviously they throw all this at him. There's a lot of bickering with him and the various policemen who are talking to him. And they kind of, like, they focus on some of the details, like, around of what's going on. For example, behind the glass at one point, the white detective, like, chews out the black uniform police officer for not saying what he means. But then when the white detective was into the room to talk to Marlowe, the black cop from behind the glass is, like, giving him some lip now that he's able to, because he's not in the room with them anymore. And it definitely felt like there was, like, some... I don't know, like... showing some of the unease in the pecking order and some of the things, because even like the detectives, when they're yelling at Marlowe, they're using homophobic slurs. Like, there's a lot of just stuff been thrown around to, again, it's almost like this is hard boiled, but it's hard boiled in a way that they couldn't have done in the 40s, because they wouldn't be allowed to do certain things in the 40s, but it's the 70s
like
now.
Hays Code stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one bit. Obviously, this would have been something the Hays Code didn't allow, but the he's got ink all over his hand, and he just starts smearing it on his face, and they never quite go all the way to like full racist, but boy, do they dance on that precipice.
I don't think that's what he was trying to do, though. I think because he was talking about going to like a game, so he put it on his cheeks first, as if it was like the two like lines, and then he sort of like did one big one across his forehead. So I don't think he was even like trying to go for a race thing.
Maybe I thought I picked up on one of the lines being a race thing, but I can't recall which one it was.
I mean, there was a lot of quick dialogue in there. If you tell me I missed like half of it, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. But no, I like I said, I'm like 20 minutes in, 20 minutes out. This opening 20 minutes here, it's very slow paced. It's very much a slow burn. Just to get to the like Tijuana part takes a good 15 minutes. Like it takes quite some time. But by this point, coming into the booking station and all that sort of stuff, this like rockets through. It is absolutely at a blistering pace because I think they're trying to make you feel like the character if you don't know what's going on. You're just thrown into the middle of this, and then you're left of zero answers pretty much by the end of the scene, except for the fact of she's dead and we think you're involved.
Yeah, a character we've never met is dead as well, so which is not necessarily a problem, but it's the sort of thing where you have to keep that in mind in terms of how much we're going to care about the crime itself, right? So all we really have to go on is the idea that like Marlowe cares about the fact that his friend's been accused of this crime. Although even he, if he stops and thinks about it, can't deny that him wanting to race to Mexico in the middle of the night is maybe a little suspect given what he's now been accused of. But
yeah,
the first like 15-20 minutes I was kind of into, because it was like, again, it was like sort of setting these pieces up. There was kind of an atmosphere to going around the city at night, the top of this apartment building, all that. And I appreciated this idea of the cops showing up and him having no idea why they were there, and eventually he's like, wait, who died? Like, who was murdered? Like, what's going on? Like, when it gets to those details, I thought it was good because, like you say, it kind of like throws him off balance because he's so cocky and like sure of himself. So then when he starts being sort of put off balance, he starts to kind of like, you know, like he still keeps his demeanor up, but you can tell it's kind of like throwing him off a little bit. The thing is, though, is that this happens too many times in the movie for me, is that characters show up out of nowhere and he has no idea why they're there. And it introduces like a whole element to the plot. The main one I'm thinking being like the gambling gangster, a good like chunk into the movie, which we'll get to. But
yeah,
when he was introduced later on, that was the point where I'm like, oh, what are we introducing now? Like, what? Like, come on, we've got stuff to do here. We're do this whole extra element all of a sudden.
Oh yeah, no, that's again. Once I understood that what we were going for was not focusing solely on the plot, that we were instead focusing on the web of characters and showing how they all got interconnected. I got it, I understood it, but I did, like, every time that we introduced a new plot element or went to some new location, I'm like, how many more are we gonna get? Can we please just wrap up something that we have? It's
like a flow problem, if nothing else for me. But anyway, after 3 days been in jail, apparently he's let out, and he's trying to ask the police officer at the desk, who's just sort of like processing him and sort of signing some boxes and giving him his stuff back, and he's like, right, can you tell me why I've been let out or why I was held for 3 days? Like, I would like to know, one, why I was detained, and two, like, why I'm no longer detained. Like, these are important details that I would care to. And he sees the detectives that interrogate him walking past, so he runs over and he's like, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And they very quickly, and they don't want to talk to them at all. They just quickly fire out, oh, the case is closed, it's dropped, Terry did it, and he's turned up, he's killed himself in Mexico, it's over, off you go. And Marlowe doesn't really believe this, but like they just shut the door on him, and it's like, oh, this is the mystery you've been left with. And it's like, okay, they've told us what he needs to solve now, right? He doesn't believe this is what's happened, so he's going to go off and possibly investigate. Except he doesn't. He goes and takes a case that is like relevant to it, and then it turns out that it's very closely connected to it by happenstance, and I hate that shit.
That's fair. Again, it's one of those things where you have to accept some level of coincidence in these things. Like the famous neo-noir line of all the gin joints in all the world, you had to walk into mine. Like, that's just one of those things where coincidence is going to happen. You just kind of got to accept it. I admit it does feel a little bit too, easy is the wrong word, but yeah, coincidental is just, all of a sudden the cases are intimately entwined when they never were to begin with.
Yeah, it's not even like, because obviously he takes this case looking for this woman's husband, right? And she lives in this same cordoned off Malibu little neighborhood that Terry and his wife did, right? So he goes in there, we realize we're in the same sort of area, and he gets the details in the case. And I was like, at first I was like, wait, what are we doing? Like, he's just taking a case, we're just going to ignore the main movie and just go off and do something else? All right, I guess. But obviously, by the end of the scene, he's asking questions about the case. He eventually sort of says, "Hey, like, Terry and his wife, like, they live in this street. Are you familiar?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know who they are. Oh, I read what happened in the paper. It's awful." And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, okay, maybe because they happen to live in the same place, that can be the coincidence, and maybe he'll get some detail about the case that'll send him on a path. Oh no! This couple are like intimately entangled in the whole thing. One of them's an accomplice.
Yeah, I wish I could defend it any sort of better, but it does feel completely out of nowhere where it's like, oh, look, what are the odds? And he happened to take on both cases.
I can give the movie an olive branch here and say that, well, and we're in spoilers, so I won't hold anything back here. Because this wife, Eileen, turns out to have been having an affair with Terry, right? And that's not something we find out until the very, very last, 5 minutes of the movie.
Right.
It's possible that she specifically reached out to Marlowe because Terry said hire him, so that, I mean, why? Well, the reasons, I don't know why, but it's possible that she knew about Marlowe because Terry had said, hey, I know a PI.
Here's a maybe. She specifically hired him at that point because it needed to be a distraction. Terry's like, hey, I know Philip, he's not going to let this go. Give him something else to do. Give him something completely unrelated. And so it's like, oh yeah, my husband went missing. I have no idea where he could be. Oh, what's that? He's at a hospital he was clearly checked into. Okay, whatever. Yeah,
he's at a rehab place. He's an alcoholic. So yeah, we're interested. He's this married couple of Eileen and Roger, the Wades. And she's like, yeah, husband's got a drinking problem. She's got a big bruise on her side of her cheek. And he's like, hey, did the husband do that? And he's like, yeah, oh, he gets away when he's drunk. And he's an alcoholic. So, I mean, I imagine this probably happens often then. But, he's been missing, she says, for a week and wants to know where he is and, basically gives him the details he needs. And, we spend a good bit of time here with Marlowe going to this hospital, trying to talk to the nurses. They just tell him to go away. And then he just kind of wanders around as the doctor who works there is following him because he's concerned, why are you snooping around my rehab center, you prick? And tells him to go, that Roger's not there. But Marlowe goes back to the wife and says, I'm pretty sure he's there. They're trying to lie to me. Maybe you should come with me and demand to know where your husband is because they can't lie to you because you're the next of kin. And she's like, oh no, I couldn't do that. I'm too nervous or shy or something, she says.
Just some excuse, because as we find out, it's completely different purposes. But no, I really like how his reasoning here is because all he had to go off of for suspecting that place was he heard about a Dr. V. It's the V was the first letter of the name, and he had nothing else to go off of. But he found this guy. I think his name was Vettinger or something like that.
Veringer.
He goes to this guy and he's like, oh, are you Veringer? I was looking for Roger Wade. And he holds up a picture. And the reason he suspects him is that the guy says no without even looking at the picture. And I'm like, all right, that's a clever little bit of reading. That's a clever little bit of why he's a detective / PI here.
Yeah. And this is where you could get into the convoluted reasons for everything. It's like, well, did her and Terry want Marlowe to investigate the husband because they can try and tie him to the gangster who Terry owed money to and have it all be kind of I don't know, I don't know. Maybe we'll analyze it a bit more once we've went through more of it. But so anyway, he goes back that night to the rehab, sneaks up, sees the husband, sees Roger in there talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, hey, sign my check. You owe me money for staying here. And even gets kind of mean-spirited about it. And that's when Marlowe steps in and says, hey, you don't have to sign anything you don't want to. You want to go home? I'll take you home. That's what I'm here for. So drunk husband just kind of goes, fantastic, and goes with him. and the doctor's not very happy about it. That'll come back a little bit later.
Yeah. And again, from an audience perspective, it's very much made out of Roger is troubled but innocent for the most part. Obviously, he has some drunken issues with his wife and all that, but in this situation with the doctor, he comes off as the coerced party, whereas the doctor is forcing him to do something against his will. So you've got a little suspicion at that point.
Yeah, and when he brings him home, the Roger just goes in and like lies down on the couch, basically, drunk, and he parts ways with the wife, Eileen. And just that, because I think it's after this where we get introduced to the gambling mob boss character. Because when he goes back to his place, I think it's when he's leaving again, where the mob boss is there with these henchmen, and he's like, "Hey, where'd you live? Come with me." And so this movie like does have kind of like a dry wit to it, like you said, but there's one or two scenes that are kind of dark. And one of the scenes that are kind of dark is when they go back up to Marlowe's apartment with them, and they start like tearing it apart, looking for like a bag, and he's like, "Hey, that Terry was here, he stole money from me, where's the bag with my 350 grand in it?" And of course, just like the detectives earlier on, Marlowe's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about, like this is complete and utter news to me."
Not only do I not have the bag, I didn't even know there was a money being owed element to this case. That's an entirely new part of this to me.
Yeah, so I was a little bit frustrated with this extra element but added in. That said, though, the way the scene played out from like a tension point of view and things like that, the characters was quite well done. He's got like a girlfriend with him, the mob boss, and he tells her to stay in the car, but she ends up coming up and saying, "Oh, I heard a noise and got scared. Can I just stay up here?" And he lets her in, and he ends up assaulting his girlfriend. It doesn't seem like it's because he's mad at her. Maybe he is mad at her for not staying in the car, but it seems to be more like, "Hey, I care about this woman. This Justine here. I actually love her, and I'm going to smash a glass bottle over her face to show you what I do to people that I care about, just to scare you into like going and finding my money, because I don't even like you."
Imagine what I could do to you. I have nothing for you. So yeah, it's a great bit of tension. It really, because at this point we're like almost halfway through the movie, if not already there. Like it is something that really jolts you back into, okay, the stakes have been raised. There is something bigger going on here. It's not even just about clearing Terry's name or finding out whether or not he did kill himself. It's also about getting this money or finding out what happened to the money, because otherwise he's on the hook for it.
Yeah, and I get that Marlowe's meant to be this kind of cool character, so I get why you wouldn't have him be cowering constantly, but it does kind of feel like after this scene, he's not even thinking about the fact that he's supposed to find this money. He doesn't even, like, there's not a single, like, scene where he's, like, a little bit worried about it. I would have maybe appreciated a little bit of that.
I think to him, it's all a package deal. I think if he finds out one of the things, like if he finds out, why is Terry being framed for killing his wife? Why are people saying Terry killed himself when that's not the Terry he knew? And then what happened to the money? If he finds any one of those things out, everything else is just going to work out as well. So I think it's just him kind of doubling down on that side of things. You said that he's not a cowardly character. I do like there's two main character traits for Marlowe that I think are very well done, that establish like it's always a thing that you see happening. One is that he's a chain smoker. He is never not smoking a cigarette throughout the entire movie. But two, to add that little character flaw, that little fear, is that he's a cat person and he is terrified of the dog that the Roger and Eileen have. Every time it's in a room, he's up against the wall, just like, God, big Doberman. I don't want any part of it.
Yeah. So, I think that scene's well directed, and I like kind of it definitely sells me on the villain, right? Because, this bottle smashing moment does come out of relatively nowhere. Like, he spends, like, a good minute, like, talking about why she's so special to him. It's not his wife. This is someone he's cheating on his wife with, for the record. Yeah. But, he does this to her, and then it's got, like, a follow-up later on. And another scene that I think is quite good, although by that point in the movie later on, I'd really lost, like, any concern with the plot.
Yeah.
Because it's after this where he goes to Mexico to try and like get some details on like how that played out.
There's one interstitial scene like immediately following where he dips, like as the mobsters are leaving, he manages to follow them.
Oh yes, it's
And
important.
we
Yeah.
see they go to Eileen's house, which is the finally that link of saying, oh, okay, they are more interconnected.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I kind of didn't like that. Like, see when he followed them and they went to Eileen's house and they're having some conversation with her and he's spying on them. I was like, really? We introduced this whole other element and it's also connected to this couple. You know, it just like, you know, it's
Well,
like,
I get what you're saying. Look, you have to accept the coincidence that this couple is related to the case. Like, yes, that's a big coincidence, and I understand all that. However, once you accept that, once you get there, I like this from the viewpoint of it immediately makes you distrustful of Eileen. Because up until that point, she has been nothing but a likable character, someone that we can associate with. She was being beaten by her husband. She just got her husband back, and now there's all this, you know, tension. There's even a sexual tension thing going on between her and Marlowe as well. Like, you get this idea that maybe she'll leave her husband and go to him. But I like how this immediately sets up the fact of you don't hear their conversation, but you do see she gets to walk away unharmed. So are they in cahoots? Does she know more than she's letting on? There's something going on there.
yeah, it's just one of those things where like you introduce this new element and it's also connected to another part of the movie. It just, I don't know, the whole "it's all connected" mantra of noirs like this, unless it's done in a very specific way where everything just feels like it fits so well that it, like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. This is naturally why it would connect to this. It tends to rub me the wrong way, and like so. At this point, I'm starting to feel a little bit out of it. But anyway, he goes to Mexico to talk to the coroner and the police there about what happened, and they show him some photos of the body in ice and say this is the list of items he had on him. This is this is that. And he's like, hey, like, so you're telling me he arrived here, got a hotel, and then an hour later he was dead in the bathtub. He'd shot himself. And they're like, yep, that's what happened. That's what we seem to know here.
That's absolutely. And this was the first point that I really recognized that they were reusing the Long Goodbye song. Was it's being used as like a funeral march. There's a coffin being led through the streets, and they're using the theme from Long Goodbye as a funeral march. I'm like, wow, it's a very dynamic song if you're able to have it as a pop song and a funeral march at the same time.
Yeah, there was also like the bus he arrived on for this small village, because he's not like in the big cities or anything like that. As it pulls up, this woman just comes over to the window with a big plate of tacos to give to everyone on the bus, and I'm like, what a nice lady, just handing out tacos.
Yeah, and right up until she stops you as you try to get off the bus and say, "You $15."
So yeah, I mean, he goes back a little dejected, and this is where he starts coming back to the couple again, Roger and Eileen, because obviously there's some more to find out there. But he never just comes out and says what he wants to ask. He just kind of like hangs around. They have a bit of an awkward couple fight, and he kind of stays around. There's multiple sequences with them. One where it's just them. There's one where there's like a sort of like you know, party they're having at their house where there's a bunch of guests. That's the scene where the doctor shows up demanding his check, where he slaps Roger in front of the entire crowd of people. So that's all very awkward. And then ultimately, of course, it all leading to when he stays for dinner with her, and the husband's just kind of sauntering around, being kind of drunk and sad, and like he's had like this nice dinner that she's cooked. I think he's impressed because he's never had a Kiev before, and he's like, "How do you get the butter inside the chicken?"
Yeah,
magic.
I'm impressed.
It's magic, Marlowe. So I have to admit, this stretch of the. Other than how this ends, like how this ends with like in the background when they're at the window and because he starts asking her some actual hard hitting questions about, hey, like, was your husband having an affair with Terry's wife? Is that what escalated this? Did your husband, is he the one that killed her? As he's asking these questions that are a bit more direct and she's getting uncomfortable and saying she doesn't want to talk about it, you can see in the background outside that Roger is walking into the ocean and stumbling into the water, and then they eventually notice it and they go out to try and get him. I think the way this film captures these moments of him first going out and them not noticing it at first, and then afterwards when, you know, Marlowe tries to, like, takes off his tie and goes out of the water to try and get him, and he can't. Yep. And when it pulls back to this wide shot and all you can really hear is the waves crashing, and you realize they've got no shot. Like, he's gone. Like, he's done.
Yeah. I
really like, as a piece of filmmaking, I really like that, like, 5-minute stretch. I thought that was really, really well directed. Oh, yeah. But the preceding 15-20 minutes of the various scenes with this couple bored the absolute pants off me. I was so like wanting to sleep.
I get what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. And frankly, I didn't like the party sequence. I think by the point that we get the doctor coming in and like slapping him and all that stuff, the doctor is so cartoonishly antagonistic that it's kind of obvious that he isn't the person involved in this. So it does feel like a branch that's not going to end up going anywhere. So I get the complete like, okay, I'm done with that plot. I don't really want to pay attention to it. And the rest of the party doesn't add anything either. However, the earlier sequence before that, where, like you said, he's just kind of hanging around and all that, I think that does a great job of defining these characters. I think it does a fantastic job of getting into the mindset, especially once you know at the end of the movie what all ended up playing out. But here it plays into it a bit more because you have, again, the drinking problem going on, and you see how upset Eileen is about that, how she doesn't want, or she wants Marlowe to stay around because she wants to talk to him. But then when Roger's like, yeah, okay, let's all talk to Marlowe. We'll sit down and have a talk with him. She's like, oh, well, I don't want you in on this. So then she ends up leaving, and it's just a, quote, man-to-man talk between Marlowe and Roger. And it's got this undercurrent of tension to it where you can't tell why he feels so antagonistic towards Marlowe immediately, but you get the sense that it is because we have had these sequences where he's been talking to her privately, and seeing that she wants to talk to him privately is kind of leading us to believe, like, is it a thing of jealousy? Is it a thing of him coming after both of them now because he thinks something is going on there? And throughout the entire conversation, there's stuff about how he's upset with himself for not being, the kind of husband that she deserves. She talks about leaving him. He's like, you left a long time ago. There's talk about him being impotent as a writer. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that really plays on. He is capable of doing these horrible things.
Well, it's suggesting that. It's not like it, because I think the red herring here is the idea that, oh, maybe he's actually the killer, and the reason why he's like in such a drunken stupor is because he's got guilt over what he's done, maybe. Like, that's kind of what it's like hinting at. What it turns out to be, of course, is that he found out that his wife was having an affair with Terry, or potential murder, both victim and, well, not victim, suspect, and later, whatever. Anyway, the point is that it's like, later on, it turns out that he's sad because he found out his wife's having an affair. That's why he's ultimately walked into the ocean, right? Like, all of this is bubbled up to that.
I mean, that and a bunch of other stuff in his life that he was talking about, of not feeling in control and all that.
But sure, but I think the whole wife having the affair with some other man that she wants to run off with is very much probably the tipping point of, like, the crescendo of everything that's wrong in his life, and the reason why she probably doesn't want to be around him anymore is all built into that. So, and then she kind of uses the aftermath of this, like this death, where the police are on the beach and they're taking statements and they're looking for the body and all that. And Marlowe and her are still kind of drunk, and he's like, hey, tell me the truth, what happened? And she's like, oh, maybe my husband did do it. Maybe he killed her. And this is, again, it's a misdirect, because obviously later on we find out that she's been having an affair with Terry. She's probably still in contact with Terry, which, by the way, he's still alive. Spoilers, he's still alive. Which, we're getting to, and it's like, okay, this makes Marlowe think that the husband did it. He tries to tell the police about this, and the police are just like, no, we know he went to see her that day. And clearly, the reason why he went to see her is because he found out about the affair and went to go tell, like, the other man's wife, hey, your husband's having an affair with my wife. That presumably is how that conversation probably played out.
I was reading the wiki afterwards. Apparently it was the flip of it, where she confessed. She found out about the affair and told him about it. Oh,
well, okay. Same. Well, she called him over, okay, and said, hey. Right. But fair enough. Same vibes. So, right. So that's like, puts us in that place, and then it's like, okay, all right, are we kind of getting to some conclusions here? And then, of course, the gambling thing comes back into just to, like, sideswipe us into that plot instead.
There is one bit I want to go back to. It was significantly earlier, but I love the sequence from a deepening of the Marlowe character. Is one of the gangsters is tasked to basically just tail Marlowe around wherever he goes.
Harry.
And Harry, yes. Harry is he's sitting outside the place all night. He's watching the neighbor's house because he's like, I think those girls might be lesbians up there. Like they're 4 girls just living topless and naked, and like Marlowe has to explain what yoga is to the guy. He's just like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but they do it up there. It's a crazy thing. But my favorite bit of the sequence is Marlowe gets into his car. He writes down the address to where he's going, and he says, "Hey, Harry, just in case you lose me while you're tailing me, here's where I'm going. I'm happy to have a man like you tailing me. Bye, Harry." And then he just leaves in his car. And you see Harry like bumbling, just trying to get back on track. And I love that moment from Elliott Gould because it feels so pointed. It feels so much of like, of course you're following me. I know you're following me. Let's not make this any harder than it needs to be. Here's where I'm going. Bye.
It's an amusing scene. And then even when he arrived there and he's like, he says, "No, you stay outside," but then Harry jumps up on the fence, but then he just opens it like it's not locked. He could have just opened the door. There's just there's some light comedy there, which is all right. When the gangsters come and get him, and they bring him to the mob boss's like office, right, wherever he's like hanging out, and he's like, "Hey, Marlowe, you've not been keeping in touch. Where's my money? Have you found it? What's going on?" And Marlowe's not even like, other than when he talked to Roger, because this guy's name came up and about who owes who money. He hasn't really mentioned the money. It's not been a concern at all, and he's just kind of like, eh. And then the other detail that came up somewhere in between all this is that he got a letter in the mail, which was like a thank you note from Terry with a $5,000 bill in it, which comes up in this scene.
Yes.
Which, by the way,
that was just after he got home from Mexico.
Yeah, this is how I learned, by the way, that there's $5,000 bills, because I didn't know those existed.
They did. They no longer do.
Yeah.
They were actually apparently taken out of circulation like 5 years before this movie started, but I guess there were a couple still just floating around.
Oh, I guess they're kind of rare. But they're still legal tender, though. They still have to like accept them. Like a bank would still have to accept it to...
At the point of this movie, yes. I don't think so anymore. I think nowadays it's a collector's thing.
No, I believe... people can correct me if I'm wrong, but technically, even if you have like old coins that are like, 100 years like out of like date, and I mean, there's no reason why you should do this because you'll get more money for them on a collector market.
Right.
But technically, a bank has to take them like, oh yeah, we'll take more of those out of circulation and like credit the amount that they're worth. But obviously, they're not worth that much for the actual value anymore. But a collector might pay you thousands for them. So,
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. Seems you're right. I pulled up a USA.gov.
I learned that. I want to say Tara told me that on an episode or something at some point, because I was questioning, can you even use this money anymore? And apparently you always... I mean, don't get me wrong, the store that's selling you some pancakes isn't going to accept it, but the bank has to accept it.
You'd have to buy it for significantly more than $5,000 because there's no way you get it for face value. Then you'd have to try to take it to a bank. First off, I've been to places where, like, for whatever reason, I've had a $2 bill on hand, and they're like, "What's this counterfeit bullshit? What are you doing? You're just handing me something." I'm like, "No, it's real. It's real money. Take my real money."
I'm just going to take from context that that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. No, it is a thing. They exist, and you are able to still get them, but they're so rare in comparison to every other like face that some people just don't know they actually exist.
We actually have something like that too, and that's the £1 note. £1 notes are like, everyone like when I worked where I had to like take in money, I hated getting them because like you'd only get one the entire day, because £1 here is a coin. It's not a note. It's not a bill here. 5 and upper bills, but £1, £2 coins, those are things, and obviously the breakdowns of that. But it sounds like that. And
but that's what I'm just saying. If you went to a bank and with a $5,000 bill in hand, I wouldn't be surprised if the minimum wage teller there is like, "So you just faked this and you're trying to cash it in."
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would not feel offended when they take out their marker and like check it to see if it's real, because it's a lot of money to just assume it's real.
I don't think the marker test worked on things printed in like 1934.
Did they have to call in a specialist, like someone who's like gets the microscope out and it's like,
gotta be like, "Let's take it out here.
Can we confirm this is real and authentic?" Anyway, that's a tangent. So he's brought in here and he's acting all casual like he normally does, and they're like, "Hey, you don't call, you don't write. What's going on? And Marlowe quite quickly says, "Hey, that girl that you hit, is she okay?" Like, showing some concern. Like, I'm glad you brought her up. Let's get her in here. And she comes in with this face mask on. She's been at the hospital. She's had stuff done to her, and immediately you feel kind of tense and like sad. You're like, oh god, is he going to make another point? Because especially when the bad guy starts saying things like, oh, she's had nurses and doctors round the clock, but the prognosis is good. She's going to be just fine. And I thought, oh no, don't like hit her in the face again to like, ruin all the progress or whatever. No, this seemed to take a very different turn than that I was expecting, because the bad guy's whole thing, when he's like demanding answers and he wants the truth, he kind of goes down this path of, was it his dad he tells a story about or something, but he talks about how taking your clothes off like always gets to the truth. So he's like, take your clothes off, Marlowe. I got nothing
to hide, and if you got nothing to hide, then you have no place to hide it. Take off your clothes.
And then when Marlowe says he's not going to, he's like, oh, you feel shy? Don't worry. Everyone, take your clothes off. We'll all take your clothes off. And I'm like, what's happening here? And sure enough, we get to a point where, because Arnold's in this is the scene Arnold's in. He's taken off his shirt, and he's in his tighty whities. A couple of the other guys that are at least topless by this point. So we've got all these men who are close to being naked standing around Marlowe as he's just sort of starting to undo his tie and jacket. And the $5,000 bill falls out. And that catches the attention of the bad guy, because like, hey, there was a few of those in that money that prick Terry stole from me. Where did you get this? And it's escalating to the point where he's like, hey, Harry, cut off his dick. Like, that's where this scene goes, is that he's threatening to cut off his genitalia, and out of nowhere, the one guy that left the room comes in and says, hey, boss, you need to come and see this. And he's like, what is it? This better be important. And then they all leave the room with the boss. Marlowe just kind of gets his jacket, he goes to leave, and as he's walking out, he sees all them counting money out of a bag, and the boss is like, here's that $5,000 back for your troubles. Somehow, the money that they were looking for has just shown up here in the nick of time to save his ass.
Yep. Oh, that is one other thing, one tiny hint, very easily looked over, is that when he went down to Mexico and he was questioning the people, they said, oh, do you have a list of his personal effects? And they're like, yep, it was this in one bag. But then Marlowe remembers, when I dropped him off in Tijuana, he had two. So what happened to that missing bag?
Yeah, and when he's leaving here, now all this gangster stuff's been cleared up, he happens to just catch Eileen in a car leaving the scene. So he starts running after her, chasing her down, like recklessly, like running across the roads, and would you believe it, the scene ends with him getting hit by a car.
So you were talking about like how it felt like there were so many different like paths and stuff, and we weren't getting the resolution. This is the biggest moment I feel like of that. Like in any other story, him being hit by a car is either going to be the thing that wraps up the entirety of the story, like we just come to the conclusion at that point of, oh, look, he's gotten so physically harmed, we basically deus ex machina the story over there. Or it is the pivotal thing that is going to turn everything else on its head, and like we're going to finally start getting some answers. He may as well have not been hit by a car.
No, it doesn't matter.
The car hitting is just to end the chase. That is the entire reason it happens.
Yeah, and I'm like, you don't need to give us a reason why she gets away. He's on foot. She's in a car. She can just speed away, and that's it. Chase over. But, he gets hit. I mean, I guess it shows his determination. It shows that he's being reckless. It shows some things about his character, perhaps. But basically, there's like a comedy scene where he wakes up in the hospital and just sort of exchanges a few words with the like heavily bandaged man in the other bed.
Yeah.
And that's
the thing is, when we cut to the hospital room, it cuts to the heavily bandaged man, and you're like, oh no, look at him. He's been mortally wounded. And then it cuts over to him in the bed across the room with like one bandage on his head, and that's it.
Yeah, he's fine. He leaves, and when he goes back to Eileen and Roger's place, she's not there. In fact, there's like a realtor there with people like packing stuff up, and they're expecting someone to come and look at the house to potentially buy it. So he's like, where did she go? And like, we can't, well, one, we don't know probably, but two, if we did, we can't just hand out that information. That would be weird. So, he's like, well, that's a pickle, that.
Well, I've got exactly one place where I could think she's probably going.
So he says hello to the hippie girls. Who, I mean, we've been seeing them every time we're at his place. We see at least one or two shots of them all being topless over at their balcony. But he goes back to Mexico. He goes back.
He stops by the hippie girls and specifically says, "I might be gone for a while. If my cat comes back, please take care of it. I don't know what happened to my cat."
So he goes to Mexico. He tries to give that $5,000 bill to the coroner or the policeman to try and, like, we don't accept bribes. Like, oh, it's not a bribe, it's charity. And it's all about him trying to get to the truth, because he's basically thinking at this point the photographs of his body in the ice were fake, and this was all just a ruse to, you know, convince you that he was dead. So the end of the movie is him tracking him down to where Terry's staying. Terry's alive, right? Because the movie's not specifically said to us he's definitely alive yet. It's only once Marlowe walks into this little, like, grotto area, right, where he's sunbathing, and he's like, "Oh, Marlowe, of course you found me." And he's all friendly and buddy-buddy about it, as Terry. But the end of the movie is that Marlowe kills him. Marlowe pulls out a gun and says, "You made me lose my cat," and shoots him.
Not particularly. No, it's close. Very close. But that's not particularly. Yeah. Well, the idea of it is, and what I like about this from a character perspective, is that throughout this movie, he's been jerked around so much. Like, Eileen was jerking him around. Obviously, Terry was jerking him around. The mob boss, I mean, wasn't inherently jerking him around, but was not treating him well either. He's not been able to, like, confide or really trust in anybody. But Terry was this one character who he trusted implicitly, that he was willing to go to bat for and say, "You didn't kill your wife. You didn't commit suicide. I'm going to clear your name. I'm going to make everything happen," without even being asked. It's just something that he trusted this guy enough. And then the end of the movie basically has Terry saying, like, "Yeah, I played you. I used you. I framed you essentially for the cops and whatnot, in an effort to be able to fake my death, come down here and not have to worry about it." And he straight up calls him out and says, like, "Yeah, I did it because you're a loser. You have nothing going on. It's easy to do that to you because you're a loser." And that's when he pulls out the gun and says, "Yeah, I even lost my cat." And then he shoots him.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but also he did send 350 grand to the gangsters to make sure he wouldn't get hurt. Like, that also is something that happened.
He sent 350 grand to Eileen. Eileen dropped it off with the gangsters at that point, but there is nothing to say that he did it to save Marlowe's life or anything like that.
Okay, there's nothing to say that he didn't, though. We don't know that.
No, there isn't, but, like, the fact that Eileen was clearly holding on to the money at that point, she already had it in hand, and she didn't want to talk to him afterwards. I have a feeling that they didn't even know he was in trouble. I have a feeling that it just happened at that point because that's when she dropped off the money and stopped them from finally looking for it.
Okay, why did they have to fake his death then, though, if the money was going to be given back?
Because, I mean, they faked his death thinking that would stop him. Obviously, that didn't stop the mobsters, but when the mobsters started going after Eileen, because we saw them coming into her place as well, she realized, hey, I need to give them the money. Like, we're not going to be able to... Yeah, but I'm not going to be safe as long as that's not cleared up.
Yeah, but why do you assume the mobsters knew that Eileen was connected to Terry? I mean, the implication we got from that scene is that she walked away fine from that meeting with the gangsters, and what we were told is that they actually owed her husband some money. Now, obviously, she disputed that later on with Marlowe, but there's nothing there to me that says they were going after her because they knew she had anything to do with Terry.
I mean, I just took the stuff with the husband as a bald-faced lie. I took all that as that's why they stopped by, because he's in deep with money. Because as we find out later on, there's no reason that the husband, that Roger, should have been lying. I think he was telling the truth when he said that he actually owed him money, and that's what they were kind of stopping in there for or whatever. I think that them coming in and saying, also, we think you know Terry, we know you know Terry, here's the 350.
But that's a big assumption. We have there is not a single thing in the movie that suggests that they know that she has anything to do with Terry.
Fair enough. I got the vibe that they did, because that's the only reason I could see that Eileen would have dropped off the money at the end.
This is the problem with this plot being convoluted, is that you're filling in these blanks, and I don't think you know enough to actually fill those blanks in. If anything,
fair enough.
This moment means, like, the moment of this money showing up out of nowhere means way more if someone's specifically doing it to help out him. And even if they're not, like, I need a reason for why they're doing it. And to be honest, if, like, the whole reason why I thought he faked his death is because he wanted to get away with this money. So the idea that it's been handed over, even if Eileen made that choice independent from Terry, even if she made that choice on her own, and Terry's then going to be maybe pissed at her when she shows up later, because the end of the movie, after Marlowe kills Terry, he's walking down the street and she sees him. She's driving back towards him and she sees Marlowe, thinking, "What the hell is he doing here?" And then that's how the movie kind of ends, is her driving on to go find his body. But
all right, I'll give you one point that I think counters that he wasn't in it for the money, is that he explicitly says at the end when he's talking to Marlowe, the reason that he fled right then and there was because he had killed his girlfriend, because she talked about the murder, or talked about the affair to Roger.
Okay.
That was the whole reason that they got into a fight and he ended up killing her at that point. And he says, I had just, I needed to leave and I had $350,000 in hand. Like, I don't think the fact that he had the money was the reason he was leaving. It was because if he had stayed with all that money in hand, there would have been extra questions on top of that. He would have been much more implicated with a much bigger crime ring or whatever, rather than just the domestic dispute / assault / murder at that point.
Okay, I'll buy that he runs because of the murder, and that's why he fakes his death, and he just happened to have the money, but still wanted to get back to the gangsters so that they wouldn't also be looking for him, and that's why Eileen dropped it off for him. Okay, I'll buy that. The fact that we had to have this conversation to get to this point is just, to me, a failure of the storytelling, but fine. But my other problem here, though, is that I don't think Terry and Marlowe's relationship is explored enough. I don't feel like we get enough of Terry to, like, get why this feels like as such a betrayal to Marlowe. Like, Marlowe being motivated so much to want to kill him at the end, I don't think is earned at the end of the movie, which is something that I was kind of hinting at back when I was doing my first impressions, is that I don't think I buy into this moment. I'm like, okay, you get your cool moment where he says this and he shoots him and he walks off, but I just don't think you sold me. Like, either you had to go in harder with, like, how much he kept saying, "No, my friend's innocent, I'm going to prove that you're all wrong." That had to be leaned on even heavier, or we had to get more of them actually being friends at the start before, everything went down or something. Like, give me something more to latch onto. I think by the time we see Terry at the end, I barely remembered what he looked like, because it had been so long at that point since we'd seen him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the characterization point on Marlowe's part of, he's been wanting to confide in someone, he's lost his friend or whatever, and when he thought he could trust that one person, Terry was the one person he could trust in, I think that having that betrayal happen after everything else that's happened to him over the past few days is what drove him to shoot him there, because why not? Like, it's an absolute betrayal at the most base level of his core. But I agree with you that I am filling in the blank that the movie did not provide of, they had a deep and personal friendship beforehand. I am taking that as a given because the movie says I should, but I agree that I think the movie should have done a lot more with it.
Yeah, I think this is my problem. Like, even though you technically were able to, like, get to an explanation for some of these plot threads that I hadn't put together, it does almost feel like a technicality. I'm like, okay, technically that's there, but I didn't feel it when I was watching it. I didn't feel like the movie conveyed some of these ideas to me in a way where I went, oh God, like the rush you get when the feelings, when things click together. I never got the click together moments. And I get
every single thing I said came from that last little bit of Terry explaining in the grotto, which is literally the last 2 minutes. It doesn't feel like it's explained over the course of the movie or even in the third act alone. It feels like it's explained in those last 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know movies from this time period definitely had a bit more of a, keep up audience kind of mantra, especially to your more, like, movies aimed at adults, where it was like, hey, we're not going to, like, dumb things down. And I appreciate that, and I like that to a point, but I think when you have that combined with convoluted mystery, then you get this weird, like, two things that should not really go together, because they kind of, like, get in each other's way a little bit, for me. So, it left me kind of underwhelmed by the end, and it hadn't clicked for me in a way. And I don't think that knowing like having talked through all this and having the whole picture in my head, I don't think if I watch this movie again, I'm going to like it anymore because I know all this going in. I don't think it's going to suddenly work better because of that, because I think the character like payoffs just don't feel like they're hitting emotionally. Like, I don't know, maybe a moment where, like, not that we would necessarily get what he'd realized, but maybe the moment where Marlowe realizes what Terry's done, like like a definitive moment where he has that realization, even if we don't know what it is until he goes and finds him, could be something that works. Like, you know, like the moment he realizes this, you know, is it arguably when he's chasing Eileen? Is it when he wakes up in the hospital bed? Is it, you know, when he's talking to the policeman in Mexico again? You know, whenever he has the realization, oh, that son of a bitch is, like, he's alive and he's done this. Like, he's put me through this ringer. You know, yeah. I could have used something more to make it feel a bit more... Like, it's character rich in a lot of ways in terms of, like, how they portray the characters, but it feels character light to me in terms of actually, like, caring about them and like, really getting into, like, the emotional through line of it, because it really is kind of lacking in that front.
Well, yeah. The events of the movie do not alter the characters. There's no, like, arc for the characters in that sort of vein. The events of the movie are very lightweight in that regard, and the characters as such reflect that. But I think that the characters, as we meet them, the characters as they're presented to us, especially as how the actors are portraying them, have a lot of depth just inherently. Like, they are very well realized, very well rounded written characters where you, without knowing anything about the plot, you get what each of these characters are. You understand everything about Elliott Gould's portrayal of Marlowe. You get everything about Roger and all of his alcoholism stuff. I would say even going so far as, like, the doctor character, by the time that we end up with him, he's a lighter character. He's so laughably antagonistic, but by the time you're done with him, you do kind of get a vibe for what kind of person he is. Same with the gangster, same with Harry. I think that they do a great job of getting you to know what types of characters these are, but then they fail at the changing of them or fleshing them out via the plot. It's more so via the acting and the actions they take, irregardless of whatever the plot is doing.
Yeah, you know, I think fundamentally what I'm realizing, because I think a lot of the things I've complained about and critiqued, I think there's people who love this movie are all going to be, say, you know, rolling their eyes and going, but this is why we like this movie. Like, right. I think what I'm fundamentally saying is that I just don't like a lot of what this subgenre is. And that's okay to admit, but and it's okay to kind of, like, realize that and just sort of, like, recognize that this subgenre is just not my sort of thing. It's, at least when it's done this way, right? So, you know, like, when we do other neo-noir stuff in the future, depending on how it handles the material, it'll be interesting to see how I feel about it compared to this one. But certainly between this and The Big Sleep, I'm not feeling too hot on it.
You don't have Marlowe fever?
I do not. No, like I said, I mean, this was better than Big Sleep, don't get me wrong. I said that earlier, and I do mean it. Like, I think there's good things in this movie. There's good scenes, there's good performances, there's good like, direction in certain sequences with how it portrays certain things. I just, fundamentally, by the end, I'm like, I just don't think this was for me. In a way that I really liked the last two movies we did. I just, this one just doesn't.
That's fair.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I think I wouldn't, you know, the last two had a lot of representation with, like, big award stuff, like Academy Awards being given and such like that. I would never put this on the same level as that. I think that it's definitely well done. I think from a visual perspective, from a character perspective, like I said at the beginning, I think there was a lot of passion put in behind the scenes where it doesn't feel like this was just made for the sake of having something fill in that summer slot, or made for something as an Elliott Gould vehicle or something like that. I think that they wanted to make this for a very specific reason. They had a very specific tone in mind. And for the most part, I get it, and I think that it did work, but I do think that the plot and, you know, the mystery aspect of it being one of the weaker aspects kind of takes the whole neo-noir aspect of it out of contention, and then you're just left with this as almost kind of just a character piece, which is different from what I was expecting kind of for most of the movie. It's a very different expectation I think you really have to go in with on this from the ground up.
Yeah, I think in general for me, if you're going to keep adding new like threads to a movie, like because there's definitely other types of movies where I like each time it introduces something new and I can see how it adds to what was there before. But then there's definitely a lot like this where every single time it adds something, like I like what it started with, but then it adds something else, and I'm like, I don't like that as much. It kind of dilutes it. Oh, they've added another thing. Oh, now it's really diluted. Oh, they've added another thing. Oh, now I just don't give a shit about anything that's happening. Like, I feel like there's a number of movies that have done that with me, and it's just a style of writing that I just don't like very much. So,
That's
hey,
fair.
it is what it is. But hey. David, what are you giving The Long Goodbye out of 10?
Boy, I felt like I had a rating in mind going into it, and I'm still in the same range. I think I'm a bit more concerned about whether or not it makes the cut at the end now. But for me, I think that this one, comparatively to the other two, it doesn't really hold a candle, but I can see a lot of good in it. It's just, it's kind of failing on one or two things that I feel are critical to the genre. So even if it's doing its own thing, it is kind of missing the mark at some point. So I think I'm going to say this one, I think this one just barely cracks into a 7.5 for me. I want to say it's better than a 7, but it's just barely at that 7.5.
Yeah, for me, I've got like extremes. Like, if anyone goes and watches the ratings rundown, which is our little Patreon bonus bit where we do like the individual categories and stuff, like I was very up and down. There's certain things about this movie that I think are well done, particularly the visuals and the acting, and then the story I think completely just like loses me and goes off the rails and feels convoluted and all the things I don't really like about this subgenre. So I think for me, I'm going to land on a 6, which is kind of me saying, there's good things, visuals, acting that kind of like raise it up a little bit for me, but I can't really go any higher than that because I just don't feel positive about where it goes, and I don't really have any interest in ever watching it again. So 6 out of 10.
Fair enough. Now, the big question, does it make the cut?
No.
Elaborate on the no. Where would you put it?
For me, it's just a no. I will accept cutting it close to facilitate some harmony on the show,
Okay.
but it's going no higher than that.
All right. I mean, yeah, if I had to put this just on my own, it would be straddling between makes the cut and cutting it close, but I would not put it as cut from the collection entirely. So if we can agree to disagree with the cutting it close, I will take it.
All right, cutting it close it is. Right. And his genitalia cut it close, and it almost got trimmed off.
Saved it by a minute.
There's that. Yeah. There's a lot of people owing money in this movie. I don't know if we talked about that as like a through line the entire time, but there's a lot of like, someone stole money from you, you owe money to them. I mean, the doctor wants his money for the rehab stay, the gangster wants his money for the gambling,
I think I got a YouTube short like an hour before we started of a Three Stooges sketch where every one of the Stooges owed each other $20, so they just passed the $10 bill around twice, and all the debts were paid off. That's kind of, at a certain point, I got that feeling in this movie when they were talking about how much Roger owed and didn't owe and all that stuff.
Very good. So yeah, 70s thriller season is continuing. We've got more weeks of this. Don't you worry. Next week, we have the one that our patrons voted for. They had 3 choices, and the winner was The Laughing Policeman. So that is what we will be looking at next week. No idea what to expect from this. There's a hell of a tagline on the poster, though, that promises things. So we'll
all right.
We'll see how it works out. But that's what's coming up next week on the show. Check out the ACE, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi movie podcast, where we've been doing things like the RoboCop remake and Artifice Girl and Universal Soldier 3 of all things. So a whole bunch of things going on over there. Of course, the main thing to say, though, if you want to support the show and help keep everything coming, get some bonuses, like the monthly bonus show Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. You can do all that via patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us with a little bit of monies, or via YouTube membership if you prefer doing it that way. both methods are really helpful, and thanks to everyone who already supports us. And of course, you can support us for free by liking, subscribing, rating us 5 stars on whatever podcast service you use. All of it does help out a little bit. So that's about it. That's the show for the week. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.